Don't let a DUI charge ruin your life. Get a professional and confidential evaluation from our experienced team at True Heights Treatment. Our evaluations are accepted by the majority of courts in the state of Illinois and provide a comprehensive assessment of your substance use patterns and potential treatment needs. Get the help you need today and start your path to a brighter future. Contact us now to schedule your evaluation at 708-248-7039 or at thtdui.com.
The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1 at gmail.com.
Hey team, this is Alexandra Eidenberg. I am here today with George Brassey, and you are listening to The People with me, Alexandra Eidenberg. George became a fast friend when I learned that he was all about women's rights and protecting a woman's right to choose, and I'm thrilled to have him here today. George, give us the 30-second spiel on who you are and what you have going on.
Thanks, Al. My name is George Brassey III. I'm the founder and owner of True Heights Treatment, a group psychotherapy practice headquartered in Chicago Heights, Illinois. And I'm also serving the residents of the 5th Ward in the city of Chicago Heights on the city council as the alderman.
I love that. You are doing fantastic things in our community. And I know that right now we're all at this crazy juncture with the pandemic. And so tell me a little bit more about how you ended up getting involved in the community. How did those roots begin for you?
Sure. So I've been interested in politics and elected office and campaigns since an unhealthy age, probably about 7 or 8 years old. And I knew I was going to run for office in the city of Chicago Heights since I was about 12 years old. It starts back to go way back. I think I was about 7 or 8 years old. I went to Dallas, Texas to visit an uncle and went to the Dealey Plaza and the 6th Floor Museum and really became enthralled with the Kennedy assassination at a very young age. And then, so that's where that did very well with social studies and the like in grade school and junior high. And then my mother, Cindy Brassey, was actually a member of the school board where I went to school in Chicago Heights School District 170 for probably 12 years. So that's one of the reasons I felt really connected to you, Al, when I first met you, because I see that you brought your kids to almost every political event possible. And I used to have to do that with my mom at a much younger age. So I think that's where it begins with me.
I love it. The multi-generational Brassey is involved in the community. So interestingly, I too have always wanted to be engaged in politics from a very young age. And you'll appreciate that it was around the same age that I also got excessively and or overly engaged. I started doing a lot of work with the local committee person and the local alderman. And my parents were schlepping me to various things. But at the age of 5, I would always get a pep talk before getting out of the car. And it was, don't raise your voice, don't hit your brother, and for the love of God, don't tell anybody you want to be mayor of Chicago. And so at a very young age, I began talking about becoming mayor of Chicago. And as I got older, I realized I definitely did not want to be mayor of Chicago and how hard that is. And I realized that the work of the mayor and alderman is extremely hard, and it's really about that day-to-day work. And so you were doing so much work as an alderman, so critical. The resources you guys provide. Tell me a little bit more about being an alderman and what you're working on right now for your community.
Sure. For context, I've been the alderman. It'll be 3 years this upcoming June. So 3 of my 4-year term I'm already almost done with. So I decided to run against my opponent, Alderman Rich Amadio, who had been an alderman for 2 terms prior. And I felt he was doing a terrible job. I thought that I could provide much better representation and bring a lot more to the city council than he was. doing. It was a brutal campaign. It was definitely a trial by fire. I went through the petition objections. I had to go to court. My opposition was doing everything possible to beat me. And I just kept steadfast pushing forward. I kept telling people my story about how this was something that, has been in my heart since I was like 12 years old for the city. So with that all being said, since I've got onto the council, all the people that were initially opposed to me, we've been able to kind of bury the hatchet and, work towards building the city out. One of the things that I'm very interested in is making the city safer to bike and walk in. One of the problems in Chicago Heights is it's a car-dominated place. The city, just for context, was founded and incorporated in 1893 as an overflow place for the Chicago's World Fair. And if you were to think about where Jackson Park is now to where Chicago Heights is now, everything in between that was undeveloped farmland, rural area. So Chicago Heights kind of rose in a time that gave it a lot of advantages. But as the country's changed and society's changed, Chicago Heights also has had some of the problems of being an American city. So with all that said, I'm passionate about making the city better to bike and walk in because we are stuck in a car-dominated place. We do have a lot of issues with safety on our roads, and it's been a constant battle. It's probably the issue that's defined my first term. But those are some of the things that I'm passionate about as alderman.
It's amazing how transportation and access to streets and sidewalks is so important for so many communities. Just in the area that I'm in, they have redone several paths, and there's a big crew of people trying to get extra sidewalks put in. So there is easier walkways. Where the local high school is for children in our area, there's a very unsafe area where they have to walk over a highway in order to get to school. And there's not access to crossing guards or safe passage through that path, even though it's the fastest path to get to school. And so transportation has seemingly been an issue for every community, for every alderman for a long time. Tell me a little bit more about your community and their need for that access. And so I think of when people need access to walking and to biking, that it's becoming even more important as we consider transportation. So did your community lead that? Are they asking for that? Is that why that became the focus of your campaign and really the founding block of your first term?
Well, I would say that it was primarily my own interest because I'm an avid cyclist myself, and I see all the problems on a daily basis just riding around town. So a little more context with Chicago Heights. So the place is very car oriented. Two of the transcontinental highways, which predate the interstate expressway system, Lincoln Highway Route 30 and Dixie Highway Route 1, intersect within the city. So it's a very busy intersection. But our community is disadvantaged in the sense that there is very little safety or protection for people walking or on bikes. But our community is also disadvantaged economically. So there's a lot of people who have no other option besides being able to bike or walk to work or wherever they have to go. So it's a dual thing. I personally believe that it's a top 3 issue for the city. But it's very hard to organize around this topic because the folks that are primarily walking or biking are doing it not out of privilege like I do personally.
Yes, access to transportation is critical for work, access to food. So many things come into play. And in car-dominated areas where there's socioeconomic challenges, it becomes really critical to have that access. Thank you for the work that you're doing on that. And I know that you got the alderman stuff going on. You have your business where you're a therapist. This pandemic has created a mental health crisis. And for the first time ever, mental health is being seen through a new lens. It is being more respected than ever before. It is being covered better by insurance than ever before. Tell us a little bit more about your practice and what you're working on and the things that you're doing there.
Sure. My practice, True Heights Treatment, LLC, is a group practice made up of me, 2 of my associates, and our secretary. We have experienced a huge increase in demand since the pandemic began. I had been practicing on my own for about a year and a half in March of 2020. And I went from maybe seeing 3 or 4 new clients a month to almost 20 new clients every month consistently. The pandemic has really changed a lot of things with my line of work. For example, prior to March of 2020, I had never done anything remote or online as far as therapy. And now it makes up almost 85% of my practice. So things have definitely changed quite a bit. It has made me have to increase the scope of the practice and try to find other people to join. And that's not something that I initially wanted to do.
Business growth is a fantastic yet challenging thing. As a fellow small business owner, there's always those ebbs and flows. And right now, I know that in your industry, the pipeline is fast and heavy, which comes with the good and bad. Interestingly, you spoke about biking. We're talking about mental health. A lot of people utilize exercise or ways to have that alone time in order to recenter and have really good mental health. I'm going to go on a limb and assume that your biking is a great way for you to recenter and appreciate that time with yourself. I personally do a lot of running. I run around 40 miles a week and do a lot of walking as well. And for me, it's very therapeutic, and it allows for me to create space for myself and really recenter. What are some of the kind of simple ways that folks can, focus on their mental health, put it at the forefront of their day? What are some of your best tips for focusing on your mental health?
I think exercise is very important. Spending time with friends and family who can support you is very important. When people ask me this question, I always want to tell them, well, I think you should just make an appointment with like a therapist and sit on the couch and kind of see what that's like for you. And because even people who are not severely depressed or severely anxious, I feel can benefit just by talking it out, even if it's a minor stress compared to some more extreme condition. The majority of Americans, like 3 out of 4, would meet the criteria for some level of some mental health diagnosis. So the likelihood that somebody wouldn't benefit is lower than the likelihood that they would. Another thing I always advise people to do is look into your insurance policy. Mental health has to be covered according to the Affordable Care Act. Look into your employee assistance program at your job. That's a great resource that a lot of people can use to get free therapy.
I love that. So obviously, I sell health insurance for a living. And so I have the opportunity to help people look up doctors, help them gain that access. And your best mental health tip was to really see somebody, get on the couch or get on that virtual couch. And I think so often it's that first step that's so hard for people and finding that person to talk to. So I love that your biggest tip is just to encourage that. And I grew up in a good Jewish family. So we've been sitting on couches with therapists from like day one. And so for me, it's been so commonplace, but in a lot of communities and a lot of cultural groups, it's not always as accepted to get mental health services. And now with access through healthcare, it's even better. A lot of plans even have low or no dollar copays to go in. And so I'm always encouraging people, even if they're just randomly having a stressful call with me, at the end, I just kind of gently remind them that there's access to mental health care on their plan. And if you need us to look somebody up, we can. This pandemic has just been so challenging for many. And so it's interesting how your recommendations also tie into why the pandemic made it so hard. And one of your big recommendations was to surround yourself with family and friends that you care about and that care about you. And the pandemic made it so we couldn't easily do that. Suddenly our circle shut down. Suddenly that ability to lean on the people you did was gone. And many of us have grown accustomed, like we are now, to connecting virtually, but it still made it harder to have that safety net of those relationships. And that's really ties in right where mental health services jump in. And so thank you for doing the hard work. I really feel like your job is the hardest of them all. I can't imagine talking to 20 people a week who are relying on me to feel better and to feel confident. And so thank you for having your practice and growing your practice during such an important time. I want to learn about your family though. So you're helping all these other people. You're helping the communities as an alderman. You're helping your clients as a therapist. Tell us about your family and what you have going on at home.
Yeah, without my amazing wife, Sarah, none of that would be an option. We met, she's also a therapist too, but she doesn't work at my practice. We met at a job together where we were both addictions counselors. And I sold her on the dream of, running for office in Chicago Heights. And, she was on board with living there because she was not from there originally. I sold her the dream on the practice, and she's been the biggest supporter and encourager possible. There's no way I would have been able to kind of pull this off or have any success without her helping me out way back when I first started. And then I have a son, George Brassey IV, who is 2 years old, and he is a handful, and we've got him in preschool finally, and that has taken a big load off our back. But it's amazing to be a father. It's not something that I had ever thought would happen, but I've got him, and then I've got another one coming in April.
I love that. Growing your family is always a fantastic process, and it takes a good team. And I'm glad to hear that you and your wife are so supportive of each other. A lot of couples that are if one's a therapist, the other's a therapist. I happen to have a lot of clients where it's couples that are therapists. I can only imagine how your dinners are going. Lots of excitement there. What is your best parenting tip? Tell us.
This question gave me so much anxiety when you sent me it initially, because I was unsure, since I've only been a parent for 2 years, what to say. But I would say the thing that has been the biggest help for us as new parents would just be having the support and the reliability of our parents, my in-laws and my parents, to help kind of raise the kid and watch the kid. And, they'll take him off, my hands if we need to do something on Friday night, no questions asked. So my biggest tip would be to try to get a relationship in a close relationship with the grandparents to help you raise it. Because I grew up in a family that my grandparents lived a block away from me my entire life. So they were always involved with us. So that's my tip.
George, I love learning that your family is so tight-knit and that you guys are this multi-generational family. You also clearly have 4 Georges in the family. Yes. You're the third, your son's the fourth. What I would love is if you could recommend to my parents that they hang out with my kids. What I've learned is that when you have 4 kids in 3 years, it's a little bit harder to ask the grandparents to stop by on a Friday, but I'm working on them on it. So my parents are amazingly helpful and always there. However, I think that they put the babysitting category at the tail end of things that they appreciate, and they would much prefer to send over an Amazon package or a lovely meal. And I feel that grandparents create such a wonderful place for our children. And I'm so grateful to have both sides, my husband and my side, there to be with our kids. But we've not gotten to the babysitting component yet. So I'll have to lean on you more for this fantastic parenting tip. And thank you for your time. It's been amazing to be with you, and a delight to learn more about you and all the work you're doing in our communities. I'm Alexandra Eidenberg, and this is The People with me. Thanks for joining us today, George.
Thanks for having me.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023.
Begin to transform your life and work towards inner peace with expert psychotherapy. At True Heights Treatment, our experienced therapists provide personalized, compassionate care to help you overcome life's challenges and reach your goals. Whether you're struggling with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, or other mental health concerns, our team is here to support you. With a warm and welcoming in-person and virtual office atmosphere and a commitment to person-centered and evidence-based treatments, we are dedicated to helping you address your life's challenges. Contact us now to schedule your first session at 708-248-7039 or online at trueheightstx.com. Book your appointment today and start your journey towards a happier, healthier life.
Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.